Nestled in a picturesque corner of the suburb, Maplewood Estates stands as a testament to modern community living. The tree-lined streets are flanked by well-manicured lawns, and every home boasts unique architectural charm. Families thrive here, drawn by the promise of tranquil living paired with the convenience of nearby amenities. Children ride their bikes along the sidewalks, while neighbors greet one another with warm smiles during evening strolls. This idyllic setting is not just a collection of houses. It's a tightly knit community where residents take pride in their surroundings. At the heart of Maplewood Estates lies its Homeowners Association, HOA, an organization designed to uphold property standards and foster a sense of belonging among residents. The HOA plays an essential role in maintaining shared amenities like parks, walking trails, and the community pool, a sparkling oasis that serves as a gathering place for families during hot summer days. This pool is more than just a place to swim. It's where friendships are forged, birthday parties are celebrated, and community events are held. It embodies the spirit of togetherness that defines life in Maplewood Estate. The HOA enforces rules and regulations that govern the use of these shared spaces to ensure everyone can enjoy them comfortably. From guidelines on landscaping to rules about noise levels after dark, the association aims to maintain order and encourage respect among neighbors. Monthly meetings are held to discuss updates, address concerns, and facilitate open communication between residents and board members. While many appreciate the structure provided by the HOA, some view it as an overreach into their personal lives. As seasons change and families settle into their routines, tensions occasionally bubble beneath the surface, particularly when it comes to shared amenities. Residents may have different views on how these spaces should be maintained or used, leading to conflicts fueled by misunderstandings or differing expectations. And so it was that one seemingly ordinary day in late June transformed into an extraordinary episode for one homeowner at Maplewood Estates. The sun blazed overhead as families flocked to the community pool on that fateful Saturday afternoon. Laughter echoed off the water's surface as children splashed about while parents lounged under colorful umbrellas. Among those enjoying this communal retreat was Jessica Thompson, a longtime resident who cherished her weekends spent at the pool with her friends and family. Unbeknownst to Jessica, however, there was tension brewing within the ranks of their HOA, a simmering conflict involving Karen Miller, a relatively new resident who had recently taken on an active role in neighborhood affairs. Known for her strong opinions and fervent dedication to enforcing what she believed were proper standards for communal living, Karen had quickly become both respected and controversial among her neighbors. On this day, as Jessica settled onto her favorite lounge chair with a good book in hand, an unexpected confrontation was about to unfold. Karen approached with an assertive stride that demanded attention. Her expression was serious as she prepared to lay claim not only over her own opinions, but over territory she believed should be governed by her interpretation of HOA rules. "Excuse me," she called out abruptly as Jessica dipped her toes into the refreshing water. "Do you realize you're trespassing? This pool is part of my property now." Jessica looked up from her book in confusion. Surely Karen couldn't be serious. The pool had always been a shared space, accessible to all residents, an integral part of what made living in Maplewood Estates enjoyable. "Karen," Jessica replied cautiously, "this is our community pool. It belongs to everyone who lives here." But Karen was undeterred. She had come armed with newfound authority granted by recent changes in board leadership within the HOA that had empowered her ambitions, however misguided they might be, to impose stricter rules over common areas. As tensions escalated between them under the glaring sun amidst laughter from other poolgoers nearby, Jessica's mind raced through memories of past encounters with Karen, a mixture of annoyance and disbelief at how quickly things could devolve from camaraderie into conflict within their close-knit neighborhood. This clash marked just the beginning of what would become a much larger drama unfolding within Maplewood Estates, a reflection not only on property rights, but also on how community dynamics can shift when individuals feel empowered or emboldened to assert ownership over common spaces they once cherished together. Karen Miller moved to Maplewood Estates just a year ago, but her presence quickly transformed her from a newcomer to an influential figure within the tumultuous landscape of the Homeowners Association. Known for her meticulously curated social media profiles that portrayed a life of order and perfection, Karen seemed eager to enforce those standards in her neighborhood. Where she once found comfort in having a garden with orderly rows and perfectly trimmed hedges, she now viewed herself as the self-appointed guardian of community decorum. With a keen eye for detail, Karen was quick to notice even the slightest deviation from HOA regulation. If a neighbor's lawn showed signs of weeds or if children dared to play too close to flower beds, she would be on them like a hawk soaring down upon its prey. While some appreciated her diligence, others regarded her as overly intrusive, an HOA Karen in every sense of the term. The term had gained traction among residents, often used half-jokingly, but with an undertone of resentment toward her self-righteous demeanor. Karen took pride in attending every HOA meeting, frequently bringing an agenda filled with suggestions and complaints alike. She held tight to the belief that her activism was driven by a noble cause to uphold the integrity of their golden suburban oasis. Unfortunately, this intense dedication translated into an assertive personality that rubbed many neighbors the wrong way. Instead of fostering unity and collaboration, her presence often sparked divisive conversations over matters that most would consider trivial. Despite this reputation, Karen wasn't without her supporters. Some neighbors saw value in having someone willing to take charge and ensure adherence to community guidelines. However, her penchant for micromanagement created an atmosphere where many residents walked on eggshells around her, unsure of what small transgression might provoke yet another biting critique or set off her righteous indignation. As summer approached, and with it increased activity at their beloved pool, Karen's intensity only intensified. She began voicing concerns about pool etiquette, insisting that all visitors adhere strictly to rules she thought necessary for maintaining safety and decorum, most notably regarding noise levels and cleanliness. Jessica Thompson had long been comfortable at the pool. It was an extension of her backyard, a place where laughter flourished and memories were made with family and friends. Jessica prided herself on this communal aspect which embodied everything wonderful about Maplewood Estates, something she felt should remain untouched by unnecessary restrictions imposed by someone who had only recently joined their rank. Yet that tension between Karen's fierce commitment and Jessica's laid-back approach became particularly pronounced when Karen sought to extend her influence beyond mere aesthetics into operational territory, claiming more authority over shared spaces than was customary for any resident, let alone someone still navigating the ropes of neighborhood relationship. On one particular day at the pool, while Jessica relaxed with friends under swaying palm trees, she noticed Karen lurking nearby, arms crossed tightly as though guarding sacred ground. "Hey there," called out Karen in a tone that suggested both cheerfulness and foreboding. "Do you think we could start circulating some flyers about proper pool use? I honestly feel like we need more oversight down here." Jessica raised an eyebrow, taken aback not just by the suggestion, but by its implications for their easygoing lifestyle. "Karen," she replied calmly yet firmly, "I think we're all pretty capable of sharing the space without needing additional rules." However, instead of taking the hint or engaging in constructive dialogue, Karen doubled down on her position, citing ambiguous rules from previous HOA meetings meant only for discussion purposes, not actual protocol. She attempted to persuade Jessica that chaos lurked just beneath the surface of their cherished community oasis. Those encounters marked the beginning of summer tension. Karen's fervor grew correspondingly along with rising temperatures, a clash brewing silently beneath sunny afternoons, punctuated by innocent laughter splashing against cool waters. As news spread about recent exchanges between Jessica and Karen among residents lounging nearby, a mix of concern shadowed by amusement, they watched as incidents escalated from harmless miscommunications into outright quarrels. Not simply business as usual for neighbors, but instead reflections on ownership, both literal and figurative in definition. Unbeknownst to them all, though, was how quickly these dynamics would evolve once powers began shifting within HOA governance in unexpected ways, an irrevocable change signaling turbulence ahead as personal interpretations clashed dramatically against clearly defined community values. The community pool at Maplewood Estates was not just a body of water, it was the lifeblood of the neighborhood, a place where bonds were formed and memories were made. Nestled amidst palm trees and flowering shrubs, the pool offered families an escape from the summer heat and a venue for social interaction. It served as an oasis where laughter echoed, friends gathered, and children splashed joyfully under the warm sun. This shared space held significant meaning for the residents, embodying the spirit of camaraderie that defined their lives in this suburban paradise. Managed by the Homeowners Association (HOA), the pool was governed by a set of rules designed to ensure safety, cleanliness, and respectful interactions among users. These regulations included standard practices such as no running on pool decks, proper supervision of young children, and guidelines for guests to limit overcrowding during peak hours. The HOA also implemented policies regarding noise levels, requesting that residents keep music at a reasonable volume to preserve the serenity that many sought while using the pool. While these rules were meant to promote harmony, they also laid the groundwork for Karen's burgeoning influence within the community. As she scrutinized adherence to these regulations, her perception of order led her to take her role far beyond what many residents deemed appropriate. Karen viewed herself as a vigilant protector of both the pool and its associated etiquette, believing that her actions were crucial for maintaining a peaceful environment. For Jessica Thompson and many others, however, the pool represented more than just rules. It was a cherished communal space meant for leisure and enjoyment. Jessica often spent weekends there with her family, relishing in the carefree atmosphere as children frolicked about. To her, enforcing strict compliance with every guideline felt less like protecting their beloved space and more like an infringement on their freedom to enjoy it fully. This disconnect between Karen's perspective and Jessica's love for spontaneous fun heightened tensions as summer progressed. In conversations among residents prior to this escalating conflict, common themes emerged regarding appropriate behavior at the pool. Many discussed how some degree of flexibility should exist within shared spaces. They believed that fostering a sense of belonging meant allowing room for laughter, perhaps even some splashing without fear of repercussions or unsolicited admonishments from neighbors like Karen. Nevertheless, Karen's unwavering commitment drove her to propose additional measures aimed at enforcing compliance even further. During HOA meetings, she regularly suggested implementing signage around the pool with reminders about noise levels and cleanliness standards. While some acknowledged these might improve awareness, others rolled their eyes at what they perceived as an overreaction. Throughout June and July, whispers circulated among residents about Karen's increasingly assertive demeanor whenever she encountered rule breakers or even perceived one. It became common knowledge that she carried a small notebook with her notations of infractions spotted during her frequent visits to the pool. Concern shouldered its way into these discussions as neighbors worried that fear of reprimand might stifle the vibrant energy that characterized their summer gathering. As Karen's reputation escalated to that of an unofficial enforcer within the neighborhood dynamic, many began discussing how they could restore balance while still enjoying their community amenities without constant judgment lurking nearby. Various proposals were shared informally. Some hoped to create a pool etiquette committee comprised of several residents who could mediate disputes before they escalated, or perhaps introduce designated social hours when families were encouraged simply to relax without worrying about strict observance of rules. Despite these efforts at compromise, tensions continued simmering just beneath the surface until they reached a boiling point on that fateful Saturday afternoon, when Jessica found herself face to face with Karen's unfounded declaration of ownership over their beloved pool. A moment that would thrust both women and residents into uncharted waters of conflict over what should be accessible communal joy versus stringent oversight in a place once viewed solely as shared refuge. Little did either woman realize how significantly this moment would shift perceptions within Maplewood Estates. It was about much more than mere property rights. It encapsulated deeply held beliefs about community values and personal freedoms thriving in spaces where individuals once felt welcomed, without reservation or fear. It was a sun-drenched Saturday afternoon, the kind of day that beckoned families to gather at the Maplewood Estates community pool. The air was filled with laughter, joyful splashes, and the scent of sunscreen as children played while their parents relaxed nearby. Jessica Thompson settled into her favorite lounge chair, a book in hand and a refreshing drink by her side, relishing the carefree atmosphere she had always enjoyed. For her, this pool represented freedom and community, an escape from daily life where she could unwind and connect with her neighbors. Karen arrived shortly after noon, striding toward the pool with an air of purpose that unsettled those who knew her. She clutched her characteristic notebook tightly in one hand, glancing around as if ready to tally infractions. The vibrant scene seemed to aggravate her resolve to enforce order as she scanned the area, until her sharp gaze fell upon what she deemed excessive noise from a group of laughing children playing tag at the water's edge. "Hey! Let's keep it down over there," Karen shouted before even reaching the edge of the pool, her voice cutting through the laughter like a knife. Jessica looked up, surprised by this sudden outburst which contradicted the joyful ambiance surrounding them. "Karen, they're just having fun," Jessica replied lightly, trying to diffuse the situation. "It's a weekend, kids are supposed to play." But Karen was already marching closer, her demeanor shifting perceptibly. "We have rules for a reason," she responded curtly. "Everyone needs to be mindful of their behavior." The atmosphere grew tense as Jessica sat up in her chair, frowning at Karen's intrusion into their delightful day out. While conversations among residents had steered clear of confrontation thus far, it seemed inevitable now that Karen's rigid mentality would ignite conflict. "Surely we can let them enjoy themselves without turning this place into a courtroom," Jessica countered, exasperation creeping into her tone. The other pool users looked on curiously. Whispers spread among them about Karen's apparent obsession with control over shared spaces. Ignoring Jessica's attempt at olive-branching dialogue, Karen seized the moment and pivoted dramatically. "And speaking of rules," she continued fiercely, "let's discuss ownership." Shifting gears from petty etiquette to something more severe took Jessica aback. "What do you mean by ownership?" she asked cautiously as others began paying closer attention. The clash expanded rapidly as frustration lay thick like humidity in the air. It was no longer merely about noise levels but about claims far graver, the notion that someone could lay claim over what belonged to all residents. "I have every right to assert my stake in this community," Karen declared more loudly now while gesturing toward the pool, her eyes intense with conviction. "I mean to protect it from any misuse or degradation which could lead to larger issues down the line." Jessica shook her head in disbelief. "This isn't your property, it belongs to all of us. We're allowed here just as much as you are." At that moment, steam seemed to pulsate from Karen's very being. Furrows ran deep across her forehead, and tension held steady like taut rope, threatening to snap. With an abrupt motion, she stepped forward until only inches separated them. A confrontation alive with unyielding determination on one end and sheer disbelief on the other. "Yes," she snapped back, her voice gaining strength. "This is my territory now. I won't have you trespassing without proper respect for rules I am committed to enforcing." Her aggression surprised those around them who remained still in shock, some covering mouths in disbelief while others exchanged stifled chuckles that hid rising dread beneath uneasy humor. Jessica took a slow breath before gathering herself. She met Karen's intense stare head-on, refusing to cower or be intimidated by this sudden turn toward aggression regarding shared spaces they both had cherished for weeks past. Together alongside neighbors who enjoyed idle afternoons soaking up joy amid laughter. "It seems you've mistaken community living for owning land," Jessica replied steadily now, even though adrenaline coursed through her veins amidst palpable tension crackling between them both, like distant thunder rumbling across twilight skies. "We're all equally entitled to enjoy this space." As both women stood firm yet churning inside atmospheres, strained further than ever imagined within their close-knit suburban tranquility, what had begun merely as a day out at the pool evolved catastrophically into an encounter rife with defiance. Onlookers, growing more invested, waited expectantly, not just for words exchanged, but ensuring understood stakes hinged entirely within concepts more intricate than mere property rights. They sensed real stakes emerged, connected deeply against notions rooted firmly within friendlier foundations, a struggle against ever-evolving balances between freedoms lived daily versus customs, long upheld by leniency often taken for granted, slipped precariously away amid moments changing forevermore between people meant, once only, sharing enjoyment together under sunny skies. In the midst of the escalating conflict between Karen and Jessica at the community pool, the deeper implications of homeowners association (HOA) regulations began to surface, highlighting the complex legalities surrounding shared amenities. At Maplewood Estates, Ownership and access to community spaces were defined by an intricate web of HOA rules. Residents could enjoy these facilities as long as they adhered to the agreements set forth when purchasing their homes. Most residents assumed that by being part of the HOA, they automatically had equal rights to use shared spaces like the pool. However, the rules outlined in their community bylaws established specific guidelines regarding maintenance responsibilities and acceptable conduct within these areas. The HOA was designed to ensure that all residents shared in the upkeep and enjoyment of communal resources, essentially creating a collective ownership model. The governing documents often included provisions about how amenities like pools are to be managed, specifying that while property owners could access these spaces, they must follow established regulations for their own safety and the comfort of others. These stipulations covered everything from operational hours, cleaning protocols, and usage fees, to safety measures such as lifeguard requirements and maintenance schedules. Conflict arose when interpretations of these rules came into play. Karen's view of ownership was more possessive. She believed that her role within the HOA granted her additional authority over who could use facilities and how they should be maintained. In her mind, enforcing compliance was not just a duty. It was an assertion of her rights as a member of the governing body, an approach that many would argue diverged from the spirit of community engagement meant to define neighborhood life. Jessica, on the other hand, stood firmly against Karen's interpretation, advocating for a communal understanding that valued cooperation and enjoyment over stringent enforcement. Her perspective reflected a broader sentiment among residents. A shared space should foster inclusivity rather than exclusivity. Many felt that emphasizing strict adherence to rules risked diminishing the sense of belonging that made their neighborhood special. This clash underscored a fundamental question: what constitutes ownership in an HOA? Legally speaking, while each homeowner possessed individual property rights pertaining specifically to their own homes, their rights to communal resources were collectively owned by all homeowners under the governing entity, the HOA. This arrangement inherently held nuances. Every resident paid dues intended for maintenance, but how those resources were allocated often came down to discussions in monthly meetings where opinions could sway based on personality dynamics rather than collective agreement. As word spread about Karen's confrontation with Jessica at the pool, fueled by confusion over authority, the need for clarity around property rights and communal expectations became paramount. Conversations among residents turned from casual exchanges into serious discussions about reevaluating bylaws or drafting new guidelines that articulated clearer definitions regarding access and conduct within shared spaces. A pivotal moment arose during one such discussion, when several neighbors proposed forming a committee dedicated specifically to reassessing pool etiquette and usage policies. This committee would aim not only to address current issues, but also provide a platform for ongoing dialogue about community practices, promoting harmony rather than division as they navigated through differing opinions on governance versus personal freedom. Meanwhile, tensions continued simmering beneath the surface with regard to Karen's increasingly aggressive posture towards rule enforcement. Her actions may have been well-intentioned, aimed at preserving what she felt was important within shared spaces, but her approach alienated many who once enjoyed easy camaraderie around the poolside. Legal complexities soon emerged as well. Some residents began considering consulting with legal experts familiar with HOA laws to better understand their rights concerning access and compliance issues involving common areas. They sought reassurance that individual freedoms wouldn't be stifled by any one resident's interpretation of property regulations or claims over authority. As summer unfolded into late July, anticipation loomed among neighbors gathered at each meeting. The desire for resolution was palpable. Struggle unfolding at Maplewood Estates became emblematic of broader themes found in many communities grappling with similar conflicts. It illuminated how vital clear communication is in striking balances between individual liberties cherished by homeowners while ensuring collective responsibilities are met harmoniously toward every neighbor involved. Ultimately, as both sides navigated this complex tangle surrounding ownership versus authority, a tug of war over shared enjoyment, it became evident that clarity lay not just within bylaws themselves, but also within fostering an environment where every voice mattered. A lesson learned through trials faced together under sunny skies turned cloudy amid rising tensions threatening cherished moments long identified with community living. As the confrontation between Karen and Jessica unfolded, Residents of Maplewood Estates began to express their opinions, revealing a spectrum of reactions that reflected both support and opposition. The community, once characterized by its harmonious atmosphere, now found itself divided as neighbors weighed in on the escalating tension surrounding the pool incident. Some residents sided with Karen, viewing her assertiveness as necessary for maintaining order within the community. They appreciated her commitment to enforcing HOA rules, believing that without someone like her, the shared spaces could devolve into chaos. "We need someone to keep things in check," remarked Linda, a resident who often echoed Karen's sentiments during HOA meetings. "If we let anyone run wild, what happens to our property values? We can't just let kids splash around without consideration." Linda's perspective resonated with a handful of others who appreciated Karen's vigilance. They believed that her enforcement of rules reflected a broader responsibility that homeowners should embrace, namely ensuring that communal spaces were kept clean and respectful for all users. This group admired her willingness to voice concerns and felt that Jessica's carefree attitude could undermine the shared enjoyment of the pool. However, many residents were equally vocal in their support for Jessica, regarding her as a voice of reason amidst what they perceived as Karen's excessive control. "It's supposed to be a community pool, not a private property," protested Tom, a longtime resident and father of two. "We come here to relax and enjoy ourselves, not to worry about being policed for every little thing." His comments captured a sentiment shared by numerous families at the pool who cherished the lightheartedness and camaraderie that the amenity provided. Tom's support for Jessica was echoed by several other families who expressed frustration over how Karen's behavior had affected their enjoyment of the space. They began recounting previous instances where Karen had intervened during social gatherings or family events, issuing warnings or reminders about rules even when no real infractions were occurring. Such stories fueled discussions about whether her intentions were truly about maintaining decorum or if she simply relished the power her position afforded her. "Last summer, I remember she told my daughter she couldn't swim with her friends because they were too loud," recalled Sarah, another resident who regularly frequented the pool. "We were just having fun. It was ridiculous." As stories like Sarah's circulated through conversations at poolside gatherings and social media groups, negative perceptions of Karen began crystallizing among a larger group of residents. These divided opinions led to deeper discussions about community values. Many residents felt that their neighborhood thrived on inclusivity and mutual respect rather than strict enforcement of rules. Conversations turned serious as residents debated how best to address their concerns about Karen's behavior without creating further rifts in their community. A few neighbors proposed organizing informal gatherings to discuss shared expectations for pool usage and clarify permissible conduct. As these discussions unfolded, it became evident that some residents felt disillusioned with the HOA's current leadership structure and its apparent inability to mediate conflicts effectively. "Maybe we should consider revisiting how we approach these meetings," suggested Angela, a former board member who had stepped back from leadership roles due to frustrations with procedural inefficiencies. "It seems like there are so many voices not being heard." Amidst growing tension and disagreement over ownership versus collective rights at the pool, Karen remained steadfast in her beliefs. She attended more HOA meetings, determined to assert herself as a leader committed to maintaining order. However, residents' criticisms of her began to seep into those discussions, complicating her efforts to create change without alienating supporters or opponents alike. The conflicting sentiments surrounding Karen's actions at the pool forced other residents to reckon with the delicate balance between authority and community spirit, what it truly meant to share space in an environment where relationships mattered just as much as regulations did. With emotions running high, many felt compelled to act swiftly but thoughtfully. They wanted to preserve the sense of belonging that had initially drawn them to Maplewood Estates. As summer wore on and tensions simmered under the surface, it became clear that this dispute was about more than just the pool. It encapsulated broader themes of belonging, governance, and personal freedoms within their neighborhood. In navigating these complexities together, residents hoped they could reclaim the spirit of community that had once thrived under sunny skies, transforming adversity into an opportunity for dialogue and connection rather than division. As the confrontation with Karen escalated, Jessica Thompson felt an overwhelming wave of shock and disbelief wash over her. The bright summer sunlight that had once felt warm and inviting suddenly turned cold, the cheerful sounds of children splashing in the pool seeming distant and muted. Her property, Jessica thought, incredulous at the very notion. She knew the rules governing their community pool inside and out, that shared space was an integral part of their neighborhood's life. A privilege outlined in the HOA documents that every homeowner had agreed to when they chose to reside in Maplewood Estate. In this moment, Jessica's heart raced as she stood her ground against Karen's unexpected and aggressive claims. Memories flooded her mind: family gatherings at the pool, laughter echoing under the sun, children building friendships through playful splashes and game. Each recollection bolstered her resolve and reminded her of what this community represented: unity, relaxation, and freedom to enjoy life together without fear of retribution for simply having fun. "Karen, this isn't just your territory, it belongs to all of us. Every family here has a right to enjoy it," Jessica replied, her voice steadier than she felt inside. While she tried to be composed, adrenaline coursed through her body, making it difficult to maintain her calm demeanor. How could someone who had only recently moved in assume control over such a cherished communal space? Jessica's thoughts surged with a mix of emotions: frustration at the ridiculousness of Karen's claims, anger at the disruption of what should have been a joyful day, and deep sadness that her once peaceful community had reached such a contentious point. It felt like a betrayal, not just from Karen but from the very principles of their neighborhood. She had always believed that the strength of Maplewood Estates lay in its sense of community rather than strict regulation. "What kind of message are we sending if we start operating like this?" Jessica pressed on, trying to reach out not just to Karen but also to any bystanders who might have shared her views. "This is supposed to be a space for laughter and connection, not for policing one another." Her facade of calm threatened to crack as she gestured toward the families enjoying the day with them. The joy in their faces was palpable. She couldn't stand by while that joy was put at risk by someone's overzealous enforcement of rule. Karen's demeanor shifted furiously, her conviction solidified by Jessica's challenge. With arms crossed tightly across her chest, she retorted, "And what happens when this fun goes too far? We can't risk chaos. I won't let it happen." The emotional weight of her words hung heavily in the air, striking a chord with some who might have shared her desire for structure. But for many others around them, it further fueled the division that had begun to emerge. Jessica took a deep breath and reminded herself that engaging in a shouting match would do little to resolve their differences or heal the rifts within their beloved neighborhood. She forced herself to refocus on the facts surrounding their situation. It wasn't just about their heated exchange. It was about ensuring everyone understood what the shared ideals of Maplewood Estates really meant. "In our community guidelines, everything is defined clearly," she stated resolutely, hoping to root their conversation back in logic rather than emotion. "Shared spaces like this pool exist for everyone's use and enjoyment, as long as we conduct ourselves respectfully." The challenge now was getting through to Karen while simultaneously rallying support from others present. As residents began to look on more intently and voices sparked hushed conversations about Jessica's perspective versus Karen's assertiveness, Jessica could feel a shift in atmosphere. No longer was this just a matter between two individuals. It had transformed into a reflection of broader issues involving ownership rights, authority, and individual freedoms within their neighborhood. Despite the tension coursing around them like electric currents threatening to ignite new arguments, Jessica remained steadfast in her beliefs. She knew deep down that standing up for what she believed in was essential, not only for herself, but also for all other residents who valued community over stringent rule enforcement. She could not allow anyone, even for all Karen's bluster about authority, to create a narrative that diminished collective joy or freedom. As summer settled into its later days and shadows began lengthening alongside feelings of unease within Maplewood Estate, Jessica hoped that clarity would emerge from this confrontation, a chance for residents to come together once more and reaffirm what made their community truly special. An opportunity to transform adversity into dialogue about connection rather than division. It was a critical juncture. The fight over authority versus enjoyment would define how Maplewood Estates continued forward beyond these sun-soaked moments at the pool. As news of the confrontation between Jessica and Karen spread throughout Maplewood Estates, it quickly escalated into a larger dispute involving other members of the Homeowners Association (HOA). The once peaceful gatherings at the community pool had transformed into heated discussions among residents, each side passionately defending their beliefs about ownership, enjoyment, and the nature of communal living. What began as a personal conflict was rapidly morphing into a broader debate about community values and governance. In the days following the altercation, several residents took to social media and local neighborhood forums to voice their opinions. Some supported Jessica's stance, expressing their desire for a community that embraced joy and spontaneity rather than one ruled by strict enforcement of regulations. "We want to enjoy our pool without fear of being harassed by an overzealous neighbor," one resident commented, echoing the frustration shared by many. Others sided with Karen, voicing concerns about safety and order within shared spaces, insisting that rules must be enforced to protect the integrity of their neighborhood. The HOA board decided to convene an emergency meeting to address the escalating tension. Flyers were distributed around Maplewood Estates, inviting all residents to participate in what promised to be a contentious discussion about pool usage and community guidelines. This meeting drew a larger crowd than usual, residents curious to see how their neighbors would navigate this unfolding drama. As residents filed into the community center that evening, palpable tension filled the room. Karen arrived first, her demeanor resolute as she prepared to make her case for stricter enforcement of existing rules regarding the pool. Jessica arrived shortly after, flanked by supportive neighbors who echoed her belief in fostering a welcoming atmosphere. The contrast between their approaches could not have been more apparent. Karen stood confidently at the front, ready to assert her authority, while Jessica's group sought solidarity through camaraderie and shared value. The meeting commenced with HOA President Mark Johnson addressing everyone present. "We are here tonight to discuss recent events at our community pool and address any concerns regarding our pool rules," he stated firmly. His tone tried to maintain neutrality but was overshadowed by the palpable air of conflict permeating from both sides. Karen seized the moment, presenting her perspective with fervor. She outlined her belief that if residents were allowed too much freedom without oversight, it could lead to chaos that might damage property values and even safety. "We need to protect our community from irresponsible behavior," she insisted, gesturing towards Jessica's supporters as if they were an example of that very chaos she feared. Fired up by Karen's assertions, Jessica stood up next to share her viewpoint. "This is not just about rules, it's about who we are as a community," she began passionately. "The pool should be our space for laughter and connection, not governed by fear or intimidation." She looked around at her neighbors for support. Some nodded in agreement while others appeared torn between conflicting loyalties. As more residents took turns speaking, some sharing anecdotes of enjoyment marred by unwanted interference from Karen, it became clear that this divide was growing deeper. Remarks flew back and forth across the room like sparks, igniting fuel in a dry field. Accusations of bullying clashed with calls for order as emotions ran high. Amidst heightened tensions, Mark intervened in an attempt to restore some semblance of calm. "Let's remember why we formed this HOA," he reminded everyone gently but firmly. "To create a safe environment where we all feel welcome." But Karen was undeterred. She pressed on with her agenda for stricter governance over communal activities, while other residents questioned whether this approach truly reflected their collective values or simply served one individual's vision for control. In what felt like an impromptu war room for neighborhood philosophy on communal rights versus individual freedoms, it became increasingly evident that this conflict would have lasting repercussions on relationships among neighbors and possibly even on Karen's standing within the HOA itself. As discussions wound down amidst unresolved tensions and heightened emotions, whispers circulated about potential repercussions for Karen if she continued down her current path of strict enforcement. Resident sentiment was shifting. Many called for accountability not just from her but from existing board members who had enabled such divisive practices. In the days following this tumultuous meeting, conversations among residents turned toward reevaluating not just guidelines but also exploring mechanisms that could facilitate open dialogue moving forward, perhaps starting small committees dedicated to things like event planning or mediation processes during disputes instead of allowing grievances to fester unchecked. With summer slipping toward its end and uncertainty lingering in Maplewood Estates like a shadow, both sides braced themselves for whatever would come next. a critical moment where clarity might finally emerge regarding what it meant to live together harmoniously amid differing perspectives, while recognizing that their landscape would forever be shaped by these transformative events. In the aftermath of the contentious emergency HOA meeting, both Jessica and Karen recognized that continuing down their current path would only breed more animosity within Maplewood Estates. Despite their differences, each woman understood that a resolution was necessary not just for their own peace of mind, but also for the sake of their community. With encouragement from some residents who had witnessed the fallout, they agreed to pursue mediation as a way to address their grievances constructively. The first step in this effort was to engage a neutral third party to facilitate discussions between them. The HOA board suggested reaching out to a local mediator experienced in community conflict resolution, someone who could guide the conversation without bias and help both parties articulate their concerns. After a few days, they agreed on a date and time for the mediation session, and both women felt a mixture of hope and apprehension as they prepared for this next step. On the day of mediation, Jessica arrived early at the designated community center room, taking a moment to collect her thoughts and reflect on what she hoped to achieve. She wanted to emphasize not only her right to enjoy the pool as a shared resource, but also her desire for Karen to understand how her actions had impacted the sense of community that all residents cherished. As she awaited Karen's arrival, Jessica rehearsed key points in her mind, wanting to ensure her message came across clearly without devolving into heated arguments. Karen arrived shortly after, carrying an air of determination mixed with uncertainty. While she remained firm in her beliefs about enforcing rules for safety and order, she recognized that her approach had alienated others and that finding common ground was essential. As they exchanged pleasantries before getting started, there was an awkwardness in the air. Both women keenly aware that past confrontations had left wounds, but hopeful that mediation could pave the way toward healing. The mediator introduced herself with warmth and professionalism, setting an optimistic tone for what lay ahead. "Thank you both for being here today," she began. "We want this space to be safe and respectful for everyone involved." Her emphasis on collaboration helped ease some of the tension between Jessica and Karen as they settled into their seats. As the session progressed, Jessica took the lead by sharing her perspective on why she cherished the community pool so deeply. "It's not just water, it symbolizes our connection," she explained passionately. "When I see families enjoying themselves together, laughter echoing off those walls, it reminds me why I chose to live here in the first place." Her words struck a chord. Even Karen couldn't help but nod slightly at Jessica's articulation of shared experiences. In response, Karen expressed her concerns about safety and chaos at communal spaces from her standpoint as someone who felt responsible for maintaining order. "I truly believe that rules are there for our protection," she stated earnestly. "When I sense disorder or potential hazards, it makes me anxious because I care about our home value." The mediator prompted them both to explore how these differing views might coexist without infringing upon each other's enjoyment of shared spaces. Throughout the session, small breakthroughs began to emerge as both women engaged more openly with one another's feelings rather than merely defending their position. They discussed specific incidents from previous gatherings at the pool where tensions escalated unnecessarily due to misunderstandings or miscommunications surrounding rules versus enjoyment, a realization that resonated deeply with them both. As they navigated through various scenarios together with guidance from their mediator, it became clear they needed solutions beyond simply reiterating rules or trying to impose authority over one another's use of shared spaces like pools or playgrounds. They brainstormed ideas such as organizing community gatherings focused on pool etiquette education, events designed not only around enforcing guidelines but promoting cooperation among residents. By working collaboratively rather than combatively towards solutions that acknowledged each other's fears while simultaneously validating each other's desire for joy within their community framework, began creating an atmosphere where real understanding flourished. By the end of their mediation session, Jessica and Karen found themselves agreeing on several actionable commitments. They would collaborate on drafting clearer guidelines regarding pool usage while ensuring input from fellow residents. They'd encourage ongoing dialogue among neighbors regarding shared values. Perhaps most importantly, they'd strive toward building relationships based on respect rather than regulation moving forward. As they shook hands at the conclusion of their meeting, a small gesture symbolizing newfound cooperation, The weight of tension lifted slightly off both shoulders like clouds parting after a stormy day. While challenges remained ahead within Maplewood Estates, what mattered now was acknowledging progress made through dialogue rather than divisiveness, a testament displayed through personal growth, rooted firmly within those sunlit moments spent alongside neighbors at cherished poolside. The conflict between Karen and Jessica, while seemingly centered on the community pool, served as a catalyst for broader discussions about community dynamics and relationships within Maplewood Estates. As residents witnessed the fallout from their dispute, it became clear that the implications stretched far beyond individual disagreements. The very fabric of their neighborhood was being tested. First, the tensions that erupted from the confrontation highlighted a significant schism in perceptions of authority within the HOA framework. Karen's assertive approach to enforcing rules had drawn both support and disdain, but ultimately it left many questioning who truly held authority over communal spaces. For some residents, her insistence on strict adherence to regulations offered a sense of security, a belief that someone was looking out for their shared interests. However, others viewed her behaviors as a power play rather than protective measures, breeding animosity instead of cooperation. This division revealed how different interpretations of authority could fracture relationships among neighbors who had once enjoyed camaraderie at events or casual gatherings at the pool. As disputes continued to ripple through conversations after mediation efforts, a newfound awareness began to dawn on residents about the importance of collaboration, something they had likely taken for granted in happier times. Discussions shifted from merely asserting rights to exploring ways to nurture relationships and build trust. Conversations began reimagining what community values should look like in practice, no longer just a set of rules punctuated by fear of penalty, but rather a collective commitment to understanding and respecting each other's needs. Through this evolving discourse emerged an acknowledgement that open lines of communication could heal divides formed not just by differing opinions, but also by misunderstandings. Karen's prior interactions may have felt authoritarian, but they ignited urgent dialogues about mutual respect and participation, all aimed at fostering an environment where every resident felt heard and valued. Recognizing the necessity for broader engagement, several residents proposed creating positive initiatives designed to unify rather than segregate community members based on their viewpoints. Ideas ranged from hosting monthly community chats designed informally where individuals could voice concerns without fear of retaliation or judgment, to planning events revolving around fun-filled activities that encouraged mingling among families like potluck dinners or pool parties with shared games. This push toward inclusivity not only provided a remedy for existing disgruntlements, but also invited deeper connections to flourish among neighbors who might have never crossed paths under normal circumstances. The HOA board took notice and expressed its willingness to facilitate these initiatives in hopes they would pave pathways toward collaborative governance moving forward. However, navigating these complexities wasn't without hurdle. Some residents remained cautious about fully embracing change, fearing it could dilute established practices that they believed were necessary for maintaining order. Yet through ongoing conversations spurred by Jessica and Karen's initial altercation and subsequent mediation process, a growing faction began advocating for an adjustment to existing guidelines surrounding communal spaces. They proposed reforms grounded less in punitive measures and more in shared ethics regarding conduct in those environments. This incremental transformation brought underlying psychological shifts into focus among Maplewood Estates residents. People began questioning not just policies imposed by their HOA, but also how they themselves contributed positively or negatively to the communal narrative at large. The deeply ingrained factors influencing neighborly relationships perhaps underestimated until now. As summer waned into autumn and the air turned crisp with changing seasons, so did relations within Maplewood Estates evolve towards coherence amid diversity. Opinion held vastly across factions over authority versus experiences lived daily through joyous engagements previously cherished at community gatherings. While significant work remained ahead, ensuring lasting commitments resisted regression into complacency was vital. The seeds planted during this period seemed capable of blossoming into renewed friendship and trust over time, as neighbors committed themselves intentionality toward fostering environments characterized positively instead by kindness, then control going forth collectively together. In the wake of the conflicts surrounding the community pool at Maplewood Estates, it is essential to reflect on the broader implications regarding property rights and community collaboration. This incident served as a cautionary tale, highlighting how misunderstandings about shared spaces can quickly escalate into divisions that challenge the very essence of neighborhood harmony. At its core, the dispute between Jessica and Karen illuminated differing interpretations of ownership within the context of communal living. While Karen viewed her insistence on rules as a form of guardianship over the pool, a space she believed required regulation, Jessica saw it as an infringement on communal joy and freedom. This divergence speaks volumes about how individual perceptions of authority can shape community dynamics, revealing the delicate balance that must be struck between maintaining order and fostering inclusivity. In such collaborative environments, understanding that shared spaces are meant to serve all residents is crucial. They are not possessions owned by any one individual, but rather extensions of collective community life. The reactions from other residents further underscored this complexity, creating factions within Maplewood Estates that championed either strict adherence to regulations or a more lenient approach centered around camaraderie and enjoyment. This schism posed real risks to relationships among neighbors who had previously enjoyed warm interactions at gatherings or family events by the poolside. It underscored how quickly perceptions could shift when conflict arose, how alliances formed or discord developed based on individual stances related to authority and shared resources. However, through mediation and subsequent dialogue, residents began recognizing that their initial reactions were merely symptomatic of deeper issues, misunderstandings rooted in communication gaps rather than fundamental disagreements about value. The willingness demonstrated by both Jessica and Karen to engage in open dialogue exemplified a vital step toward healing these rifts within their community. As they discussed their concerns, hopes for clearer guidelines emerged, ones that reinforced respect for communal enjoyment while ensuring safe practices were upheld. The ensuing conversations inspired many residents in Maplewood Estates to think critically about how they defined community living moving forward. They began contemplating avenues for collaboration rather than division, discussions blossoming around organizing informal gatherings aimed at enhancing neighborly bonds through fun-filled events while also considering educational approaches toward etiquette in shared spaces. These proactive measures not only allowed individuals to voice their opinions, but also facilitated opportunities for building connections outside rigid structures imposed by HOA regulation. Furthermore, this situation prompted introspection among residents regarding their own roles in shaping neighborhood culture, an essential evolution as they sought to transform past misunderstandings into commitments toward unity and understanding. The power dynamics at play helped bring underlying beliefs into focus. Many now recognize their responsibility is extended beyond merely following rules. They encompassed fostering relationships where every neighbor felt valued and heard. While challenges certainly remained ahead, including navigating differing opinions on governance practices and sustained engagement from all residents, the efforts ignited during this turbulent period cultivated optimism within Maplewood Estate. The ability to address conflicts directly turned out to be an opportunity rather than a setback. It led them closer together as they collaboratively sought solutions grounded in mutual respect, rather than unilateral decisions driven by authority figures alone. As seasons changed and autumn unfolded its cool embrace over Maplewood Estates, so too did the sense of community evolve from one marked by division into one striving actively for cohesion amidst diversity. Residents began embracing not just their individual rights but also collective responsibilities, a realization that underscored what it truly meant to share life harmoniously in a neighborhood built upon values of cooperation. Ultimately, this incident has become more than just a story about two individuals clashing over a pool. It's a reminder relevant to communities everywhere about the significance of understanding property rights in the context of communal living. By learning through these experiences instead allowing misunderstandings to fester unchecked amid rigid interpretations poised against kindness, they allow themselves growth opportunities rooted firmly within empathy's embrace as they navigate through shared spaces together with renewed purpose going forward.